guys, we're going to continue on with the review of my current setup of most of my stuff. One of the questions I get fairly often is about my night vision, so we're going to jump into that. I figured since I have two different setups for night vision, one is mine and the other one is the one I set up for my wife, I wanted to kind of just look at each one separately. So we're going to start off with mine because obviously I'm most familiar with that one. So what we have here, let's see here, get that balanced out right, is my primary night vision setup. I am running a Team Wendy bump helmet along with some DTNVGs. Now, let's start off with helmet because night vision can change, but at least helmet wise, we'll just start with that base. So what I'm using is a Team Wendy bump. So far I've been pretty happy with the bump. The biggest thing that I've been happy with is the Bolo attachment system. It is a ratcheting system that is mounted onto the inside of the helmet, which makes it so you get a pretty good, snug, custom fit for your helmet and for your head, I guess. So far the Team Wendy has been good. Now, if you're going to a ballistic helmet, I'd probably look at the OpsCore stuff. But for a bump helmet, the Team Wendy is an affordable option that has treated me well. When I first got the helmet, the biggest thing I noticed was it was a very glossy finish, and I didn't like that glossy finish, so I went out and got a wrap or a little cover that goes over the top. The biggest issue I had with that is it was very loose fitting. I didn't like how loose it was on my helmet. So what I ended up doing was going back and spray painting it. You'll notice that this spray paint is, the paint job I did on it is essentially the same theme that I've done for almost all of my other things, such as my rifles. So that kind of solved that problem, made it so it was a nice matte finish on it. So moving from there, first thing you're going to need is some ear pro. I am using the Team Wendy, I think it's the Peltor mounts. What's nice about these is once you get these things mounted, you can pick whatever ear pro you're going to be using fairly easily because these little pieces can detach from whatever Peltor ear pro you end up using, and you can mount those on there. So these actually started off utilizing, I think it's the Tactical Sport Peltor mounts or Peltor ear pro, and these same mounts are now being utilized on my Comtacs. So these little pieces here can be exchanged however many times that you need to use a different ear pro. So moving from that, I ended up using a TNVC counterweight system. What I do like about this counterweight system is a lot of people are going towards more minimalistic where they're just mounting straight weights onto the helmet. I liked having some storage in here. I liked having some cable management built into it for my Comtacs. But for the storage, what's nice is throwing batteries has been a lifesaver, especially when you're out at the range and you're sitting there going, oh no, my laser's giving out, or my night vision's starting to run out of batteries. Being able to have something on hand that's real quick to pull out and throw in has been wonderful. I also throw one of the microfiber towels in there. Now I would usually rotate those out. Pro tip, if you're gonna have one of those, try to find one that's like a neon color, not there's a lot of the tactical stuff will be black, which unfortunately if you're running around at night and you're wiping down your stuff with one of those microfiber towels and it's nighttime and you drop it on the ground, it's gonna be a lot harder to find. Whereas I'm using a neon green one, that's worked wonderfully. The counterweight system works really well paired with the night vision. On the night vision itself, a PVS 14 isn't so much of an issue. It has a little bit of weight up front, but when you start going into dual tubes are definitely going to necessitate having some sort of counterweight. There's not a lot of weight on these, but it's enough where you'll have a lot more strain, especially when you're wearing the helmet. So that Bolo system kind of tightens down around the back of the skull. if you have more weight on the front of your face, you're going to be pulling up tension into the back of your skull, and after a prolonged period of time, that's going to get very unpleasant. So that counterweight system becomes much more important. Other things that we have mounted on here is the Hellstar. I believe this is the 2. This is not a bad solution for some sort of signaling device mounted to your helmet. We don't use it all that often. When we start having more people at the range and people downrange, right now night vision is kind of a select group of people. There's not a whole bunch of people that are into night vision, but as that group has grown, there's more of a necessity to have some sort of signaling thing. So if someone's downrange, it's very clear, hey, there's someone down there. The Hellstars worked out well. I don't like how big it is in terms of how much room it's taking up on the helmet. So I might end up changing that out to something different, but for right now, this is still serving me well. I changed the batteries in it, I want to say 2 times. So it's lasted a pretty long time. Going on to a little admin light. Okay, so the Team Wendy does not have as much accessory support. I've noticed that when you start looking at some of these flashlights and some of the ways to mount stuff to the helmet, as soon as you start having ear probe mounted to the helmet, now you're running out of actual space that you can mount anything else, because a lot of the other accessories are based upon having rails mounted on there. So there's a couple of different solutions, one of which is to go to a smaller ear probe mount. I think it's Unity makes one that's smaller, but I still like the Team Wendy solution for this. So I've stuck with that. When I got to a tactical light, admin light, the problem I ran into was how to mount it on here. So I tried a couple different configurations that were more from the factory, and I wasn't very happy with those solutions. So what I ended up doing was getting my little light and taking apart one of the mounts that it comes with, and then just screwing that directly into the helmet and then epoxying it right there. It's not a pretty solution, it's not a sexy solution, but I've had this on here for a while in some fairly inclement weather, and it's stayed on and held up well, and it still allows me to replace the battery on this. So that is the solution I came up with for the admin lights. All right, let's see. Retaining mount or lanyard. This is a Wilcox lanyard, got it from TNVC. This works pretty well for me. It's not going to necessarily stabilize the night vision. Depending on the mount that you end up getting, you'll have some wobble in there. So having some of those lanyards that help retain the night vision as well as stabilize it and take some of that slop out of there, you're not getting that with this little lanyard. All you're getting really is, retainage if it were to fall off. This has worked well. I will say I've already replaced it once. When this articulates down, there we go. You'll notice that when I had it on my PVS-14, it was more pronounced, but on here there is a little bit of wear where it will rub against the mount every so often. I don't have that much problem with it anymore when I switched over to a DTNVG, but on a PVS-14 I started wearing through this lanyard fairly quick. It's probably like a year or so, and I've since replaced it. But especially if your night vision has a more pronounced wobble in the mount, you're going to want to use something more substantial than this. This is really just a piece of string. This is like freaking security guard's lanyard that he has on his belt. It's basically the same thing. But on the other helmet we'll get into, we are utilizing something more substantial that helps stabilize that. But again, for these purposes, this has worked fine. Okay, night vision. I started off with a PVS-14 that I bought from Optics Planet. It was a piece of junk. It definitely had a hum to it, like the old school buzz. compared to high spec new night vision, it is not as good. The return on investment going from I have no night vision and I can't see in the dark to a Gen 3 PVS 14 is a huge return on investment. You're going to see in the dark. And so there's not really as you start scaling that up and you start spending more on night vision, you're going to get less and less in return. Now, it's definitely better to go to a white phosphor, high spec filmless tubes. It's definitely noticeably better. But going from I'm standing in the dark to I'm seeing in the dark is such a big change that when people ask me what sort of night vision they should get, and I ask them what their budget is, and they say, well, I'm going to be saving money and I'm going to save up money for $15,000 or whatever, and I'm going to get DT and VGs and I'm going to get my whole setup taken care of. Typically, my recommendation is, A, do you have any friends that have night vision? Have you played with it? Or do you have a place to shoot with it? Do you have a place to run around and utilize it? If you don't have that, night vision is a harsh investment because you will use it and it will be the loneliest investment you will ever have. You will end up, if you've ever gone to the range by yourself and took care of your reps, took care of your drills, all the stuff you're working on, and you just go, man, I kind of wish I had my buddy here. Kind of amplify that by being in the dark and there's no one at the range at all. So anyways, night vision is a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun with friends. So if you're able to get into it with a PVS 14 and enjoy it with a PVS 14, then more power to you. Going to a higher spec night vision is wonderful if you will utilize it. So with that out of the way. Mounts. When looking at mounts, I would just recommend going ahead and getting a Wilcox G24. Regardless of if you are just getting into night vision or if you are planning on getting something a little bit nicer, go ahead and get a G24. It will save you some money. A lot of times you end up getting a Rhino mount, or I think it's the Neurotos AK2 mount. I had one of those for a while, which is nice, but if I had just saved myself some money and jumped right to the G24, it means that I would have the same mount that I started off with and then finished on. So for whatever that's worth, I recommend just going ahead and bite the bullet and get the G24. So my night vision, I am running DT and VGs. They're L3 white phosphor filmless tubes. One of the big things that people might have a disconnect in is there's a separation between what the tubes are and what your housing is. So a PVS 14 is a housing. What tubes you put in that PVS 14 is what you're paying for the most part. On a DT and VG, it's kind of the same thing. You have the housing, which is the DT and VG, and then you have the tubes that are inside of those. The different variety in tubes, you will see quality difference in whether those blemishes or the resolution. You will see when you get to the higher spec tubes that you'll have a better performance difference. But again, the difference between no night vision and having night vision is pretty substantial. But when you go from I have night vision, that's Gen 3, don't do the Gen 2 or Gen 1. Once you go to Gen 3 and you start going to the higher end, there are very few instances that a standard Gen 3 won't keep up with a high spec Gen 3. This is some of the higher spec tubes that you can get. I want to say these are like 2600 FOM. I'll have to look back at it. They're pretty high spec tubes. They have almost no blemishes on them. They're pretty darn high spec tubes. But there are very few things that I can do with these tubes that I wouldn't be able to do with another similar tube. So something to keep in mind. But The DTNVGs have treated me well. I've heard stories about people saying that they're fragile. I haven't had any of that. That being said, I haven't been horribly rough with them in the same way that I haven't punted my camera. I haven't punted my DTNVGs. But I have, gone out, run around. I've bumped my head into stuff occasionally with them, and they seem to be fine. On the DTNVGs themselves, what is kind of nice about these is when you articulate them up, it auto shuts off whatever tube. So if you're looking at dual tubes, you could have both tubes down, and that gives you a lot of depth perception, a better idea of your surroundings. You're not actually getting depth perception, but it is much easier to navigate and be used to your surroundings quickly using dual tubes. What they're not as good at is being able to meter the light levels that you're in. Because when you're under night vision and you look at the world around you, it is all, some shadows and lit areas. So what I've noticed is that being able to articulate one of the eyes up and still be able to meter the light and understand the light levels that you're in, the situation that you're in, is nice, especially if it's a fairly well moonlit night. It makes it so you don't even have to use your admin light. You could just be using one tube down and you just flip one out of the way, and now you can take care of reloading or whatever it is you need to do with an eye that's just being able to see everything. Now, there is a time frame in between you having your night vision over your eyes to rolling them up that you're not able to see because your eyes are having to adjust. So if you're trying to do that, you're going to need to have one of these tubes up and out of the way so you have one eye that's acclimated to the light levels that you're currently in and one tube that's down in order for you to have night vision. So anyways, this is my setup. I have a Nocturnum, I believe I have a wrap on here. What's nice is that it just kind of adds breaks up those lines, makes it kind of similar lighting. It's really just aesthetics, but it is nice as you can peel these off and you have a perfectly fine DTNVG. Oh, almost forgot. Okay, caps. So I'm running some Focus, I believe is what they're called. Yeah, Focus rings. Got these off TNVC as well. They are fairly expensive. So my understanding is there's really 3 options for putting a cap on your night vision. One is you can take like a Butler Creek scope cap and put that on top of your night vision, and you would, prior to that, not while they're on there, you drill a small hole. Those small holes, similar to on these, make it so you can adjust your depth of field and you can work with your hands under night vision. Because most night vision is focused out to infinity, close things are going to be out of focus. So what that translates to is when I am shooting, what I'll end up doing is putting these down if it's a well-lit night, or if I'm in a lit area, I'll have these down. If it's a darker evening, I will roll these up. So if you all check out some of my other videos while I'm shooting with some of those LED lights to kind of light the area a little better for the camera, I'll have these down most of the time, it's perfectly serviceable. You don't necessarily need the full spectrum of night vision from these. But back to what I was saying. You have the Butler Creek option, which is essentially the same thing, but you are lacking a protective lens that's underneath these. If you end up doing some force on force, it's ideal to have those protective lenses on there. You obviously don't want to shoot out the lens of your nice new night vision. My understanding is also with the Butler Creek lens caps, you'll need to put some electrical tape around your night vision to make sure that it's fitted snugly, whereas these lock on, these like little nubbins right here, these rotate in and lock these in place. The last option is you have a, who makes that? It is I cannot remember. But anyways, you have another one that is a little bit more expensive that has like an iris that would open and close on the front. The problem that I've heard with those is usually the adjustment to open and close that iris is about the same stiffness as rotating your focus ring on the front of your night vision. So when you're trying to open and closing it, oh no, I'm actually unfocusing and focusing my night vision. So far, I've liked this solution. It has served me well. So if you're looking for a relatively inexpensive lens cap, while these are pricey for what they are a good solution. Okay, that's my night vision. Let's switch over to the wife's setup. That's similar, same, but still different. All right, so the wife has a very similar setup, so we will gloss over a lot of the things that are the same. Okay, so she is using a Tim Wendy bump as well. You'll notice that gloss finish I was talking about that I wanted to get away with by spray painting it. She liked it all black and liked the glossy and liked it clean, so we've kept it that way. We are a big family of nerds, so she has put Star Trek and The Office and all sorts of little patches on hers, which I'm happy that she has made it her own. She's using the same TNVC Mohawk counterweight system. Again, it works well. She has some AA batteries as well as a microfiber cloth. She is running those Comtac, not Comtac, the Peltor Tactical Sports that I used to run before switching over to the Comtacs. She's running a G24 as well as a PVS 14. Now this is a white phosphor PVS 14. It's not as high a spec as the DTNVGs, but this seems to work well. A lot of the video you'll end up seeing of me recording through night vision is through this, when it's not through the Psyonix Aurora. So the slight difference that we were discussing was this retaining piece. So she has a little bit of wobble, which you can't tell because from the retaining lanyard. She has a little bit of wobble on her mount. So this little elastic lanyard, I think it actually comes with the Team Wendy helmet, has worked great. She has that on there and it makes it so it's nice and stiff. So you don't have to worry about that coming loose, and as well as it hold on to the night vision. Other than that, it is pretty much the same build. Again, she is doing a PVS 14 white phosphor. It's still a high FOM rating, but it does have some blims in it. One of which was me accidentally burning a little bit onto the tube. So note to self, always take your batteries out of your night vision. All right, so before I put this stuff up, I'm going to show you all what I'm using for storage. So we both are using these little Peltor cases. I want to say they're the 1127s. I will put in the description exactly what they are. But what's nice is these come with the foam that you can just pull out. They're little tiny cubes. So I've set this up in the shape of my DTNVGs. I highly recommend having some sort of case, mainly because it helps you idiot proof it. It will make it so if you do forget to take the batteries out and you accidentally leave them on, if you are fairly OCD about putting that night vision in that case, even if you leave it on or make a mistake, you're not going to burn anything onto the tubes. So I highly recommend having one of these. It also makes it so you can throw your case in your car before you go to the range, and you're not sitting there going, oh my gosh, I need to make sure I have bubble wrap and everything to make sure my night vision's nice and safe. So yeah, that is my current night vision setup. It's kind of evolved a little bit. I started off, like I said, with those Rhino mounts and different mounts to use. I started off with a generally low spec PVS 14, but honestly, I was able to keep up with most people without any problems running that. So before you go out and drop $15,000 on a nice set of night vision and helmet and everything, just keep in mind, what are you going to be using it for? Who are you going to be using it with? And apply accordingly. What's nice is if you get a PVS 14 and decide that you're ready to go ahead and upgrade, sell it. You can sell it and you'll still be able to retain most of your money. A lot of times when I am utilizing and selling things, I tend to try to think of it as renting it. If I take a slight loss on something, I look at it and go, okay, I used it for 2 years and I took an ever so small loss on that. But I basically rented it. I rented it for 2 years. So that's something to keep in mind. Anyways, by all means, if y'all have any questions, send me a message or whatever you all like to do, and I'll see if I can't help you out. But I hope this is helpful. Thanks.